According to the Children's Defense Fund, 1 in 6 kids in America lives in poverty. That's more than 11 million children. The new Frontline documentary, Growing Up Poor in America, explores the issue of child poverty and the added challenges from the pandemic. The film follows 3 Ohio families as they struggle to make ends meet. In this clip, one family deals with changes in schooling earlier this year.
Today, the school's planning on delivering Chromebooks.
He's going to be getting his Chromebook, and it's going to be his homework and studies.
Want to put some of her animal crackers on the tray?
Not right now, honey. Sean, slow your roll.
Transportation is difficult because my mom don't have a car, because hers broke down.
I was told that they think that it's a blown head gasket. It's basically, my car is dead. When you have a vehicle, you have to have money saved back for that. And not always easy. So we are gonna have to just go. See, that says stay in your cars. All right, we're just gonna get in line here. Here, you hold your sister. You just hold your sister back there. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have a vehicle?
I don't have a vehicle. I live across the street, and I have no way to get here.
Okay, who are you picking up for?
Sean and Edward.
What grade?
8th, both of them. Sorry, my car's broke down, so it's been unfortunate, especially during this time.
Award-winning documentary filmmaker Jezza Neumann joins me now from Athens, Ohio. He is a co-producer and director of this film. Welcome, Jezza. That clip that we just watched is so compelling, and it really just underscores how vastly different life can be when you look at a place like New York, where you have infrastructure and public transportation, and then a place like there in Ohio, where a car really is the representation of a chance at opportunity. And you see that really big gap there and that divide as she went to go pick up that computer. You have made films, Jezza, about child poverty in America and elsewhere before, but how much has this pandemic actually changed the situation?
I think what it's done is it's obviously introduced a whole new raft of people to experience some of the issues that these families face on a regular daily basis. So with the closure of some of the service industries and people losing their jobs in retail or in catering, etc., suddenly they found themselves having to visit food pantries for the first time, having to go and seek aid for their fuel bills or their electricity bills. And I think that what that has then done is it's created an extra burden and strain on those resources, which means those that were already needing them are finding they're competing with more people for them. So obviously, everybody is straining because of the virus and the pandemic.
And Jezza, the idea that these families were already struggling, I just want to underscore, we are talking about working families here, Jezza, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. All the families have worked at some point. One of the families is currently working at a gas station. She's technically a frontline key worker because without fuel, as she says, the doctors and nurses can't go to work. So that's a key role she plays, but yet still her earnings aren't enough. She still needs food stamps to support that, and she still gets shut-off notices, as we learn in the film. And then even Crystal, who is on benefits, she still works for her benefits. This idea that people have that all people on benefits are lazy and don't have a work ethic isn't actually true. There's a vast tract of society who actually work for their benefits and put in hours. And she, again, is working on the forefront of the pandemic because she's volunteering in a food distribution sector. And so she's still determined to do that, even though, her son is very vocal about the worries he has about her getting sick.
And what kind of strain has this placed on these families, and in particular, the children, as they watch their families go through these really difficult circumstances now with the pandemic, especially?
Yeah, I've seen high levels of anxiety amongst kids. I've witnessed that not just with the families that we film with, but with other children as well. They're anxious about their parents. They're anxious about the virus itself, but then also they're suffering from depression on top of that because they're missing their friends. They're out of school. They're not in their social groups. It's okay, sure, you can play video games for so long, but after a while, you want that human contact and you want to be with friends. And adults just aren't the same. 7-year-olds discussing unicorns and butterflies isn't quite the same as discussing it with your 30 or 40-year-old parent. And I've seen that a lot, especially the anxiety levels where kids are feeling, particularly those who are in families in poverty, they're hearing every worry that their parents are giving out, and they're feeling that themselves. Kids are sponges. They take this stuff in, and then they themselves start to worry.
And you touched on this a moment ago, Jezza, the idea that you have more people relying on things like food banks this year. There are also a lot more families having to balance childcare with work responsibilities. Do you think that perceptions of the working poor especially are changing now?
I believe that probably through the catalyst of the pandemic, people will start to see that because a lot more people have been affected by this. And the thing is, when you're in a middle class family, or you're on a higher income earner, or you have a job that allows you to work from home, and retain your current salary, you can then afford to pay for childcare or assistance or tutoring. But when you can't afford those things, you are trying to be the breadwinner and the teacher at the same time. And none of us are equipped to do that. I would be the last person that should be teaching my daughter or my son. So I think it's putting a lot more strain on these families, and particularly in single parent families. And the harsh reality of those families living in poverty is a large percentage are single parent families, and quite often it's the mother who's looking after the children.
Of course, it is an election year. You're there in Ohio. Did any of the parents, I wonder, or even the kids, talk to you about the election?
To be honest, all they're concerned about is survival right now. I mean, for them, the election has become a sort of distant backdrop to what they're dealing with. I'm watching parents as they struggle to get the support they need. There's talk of families receiving, their checks, and families receiving extra food stamps, but that hasn't necessarily just landed on a family's lap. They've had to fight for that. They've had to work out how to get it. Often, particularly if a family's homeless, they're not at the address that their tax check might be sent to if they've been previously working and were able to receive it. So there's so many things going on in their lives that, to be honest, for most of them, the election isn't at the forefront of it. It really is a matter of survival. I mean, I kind of liken it the best way of describing it is that if you imagine for a family who's doing very well for themselves, a nice, traditional middle-class family, if you imagine the tsunami or a hurricane swept through your neighborhood and destroyed everything you owned in your house, etc., and you had to struggle to find shelter, you had to struggle to find food, you had to struggle to work out whether you bought some food or you paid for some shelter. These are the decisions these families are making on a daily basis under normal life, pre-pandemic.
And your film really lays bare some of those daily struggles that are happening. I do want to ask you about some of the folks that you came across who are working to kind of fill the gaps. And I'm thinking about the delivery, for instance, of food to children who are food insecure at this point. Tell us a little bit about the aspect of people coming to fill in where those parts of the infrastructure may not currently be set up in an official capacity, but they found themselves coming up with their own solutions to try to help these kids who are living in poverty.
Yeah, I mean, it was incredibly heartening to see the way schools, for example, pulled together, and very quickly, most of the schools in this area, they know all too well how dependent their kids are and how how much the free school meals and breakfasts can matter. And so very quickly, custodians, deans, heads, everybody, janitors were pulling together. And I went into a school hall where there was a chain of teachers and support staff all working together, packing bags. I saw cooks cooking up, hundreds of pizzas to cut into slices to feed these kids. And this was absolutely crucial. That can make a real difference for a family. Getting that breakfast, getting that lunch could be the difference between having electricity that day or not having electricity that day. And you saw in the case of Crystal, she went to collect the laptop without a car. She doesn't have one. That's not an uncommon story in rural areas. I've been at food pantries and distributions where people have turned up and said, I'm collecting for 4 families. I'm collecting for 3 families. There was even one that was there for, I'm here for 12, because people are grouping together. They're trying to work out, well, my neighbor doesn't have a car, so how do we get them their food? So people were really, getting together and trying to help each other out. So there has been an amazing community spirit here in Southeast Ohio.
Well, I know you have embedded yourself there in the community for months. It is a really remarkable documentary. Growing Up Poor in America premieres on PBS and PBS.org tonight. Jezza Neumann. Jezza, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, too. And thank you to the children and their families, because really they're the unsung heroes in all of this.